When my friends first stepped into my apartment, the silence lasted only a few seconds before the snickering began. I lived in a one-bedroom place on the third floor, nothing fancy, just neat and cozy. The living room barely fit my couch, a small table, and the TV. I liked it that way. But to them, it looked like a downgrade, and they wasted no time letting me know. "Man, this is tiny," laughed Daniel, brushing past me as he plopped on the couch. "I thought you'd at least have a dining table that fits more than 2 people. "Yeah, do you cook in here or just microwave everything?" added Lisa, opening my cabinets without asking. I smiled, though inside my stomach turned. They had no idea. For weeks I had debated whether to invite them at all, but I wanted to see how they treated me when they thought I had nothing. They believed my small apartment reflected failure. In reality, it was a choice. I shrugged. It works for me. I'm not really into big places. Not into them or can't afford them. Daniel teased, and the others burst into laughter. I sat down calmly, letting their jokes roll. If only they knew the truth, that the very keys jingling in my pocket could unlock more than this unit. That the lease agreements they signed every year, the rent checks they mailed, all came back to me. Because what they didn't realize was that I wasn't just another tenant. I was the landlord, and the building they lived in was mine. But tonight, I wasn't going to tell them that just yet. Tonight, I wanted to watch. As the evening went on, their comments grew bolder. Lisa wrinkled her nose at my curtains, saying they looked like they belonged in a college dorm. Daniel made a big show of pretending to bump into walls, groaning about how cramped everything felt. Even Sophia, usually the kind one, giggled when she saw my tiny balcony and said, "You couldn't even fit a barbecue grill out here." I poured them drinks and kept my expression neutral. Inside, I was taking mental notes. These were the same people who constantly complained to me in group chats about how high their rent was, about how management never fixed anything quickly enough, about how unfair the yearly increases seemed. And here they were ridiculing me in the very apartment I had chosen to live in, unaware that their rent money every month was wired directly into my account. "Don't take it personally," Sophia said after one of her laughs. "It's just not what we expected. You've always dressed nice, and you work in finance, right? I thought you'd have some fancy loft downtown." I shrugged again. A big place doesn't always mean happiness. I'd rather keep things simple. Daniel smirked, lifting his glass. Translation broke. The others laughed with him, clinking their glasses. I just sipped mine, smiling faintly. They thought they were joking, but the irony was too delicious. The building where Daniel had his so-called modern apartment with a view? Mine. Sophia's 2-bedroom, she constantly bragged about finding at a steal of a price. Also mine. Even Lisa's cozy studio with the bright windows, mine. Every insult they threw only made the reveal I was planning more satisfying. The question was, when would be the perfect moment to let them know? After a while, I suggested we order some food. Everyone agreed, and Daniel quickly jumped in with another jab. "Can we even fit a pizza box on this table?" he asked, pointing at my small coffee table. Laughter erupted again. I chuckled along with them, masking the spark of irritation that wanted to break free. "We'll manage," I said casually, pulling out my phone to order. While waiting, I excused myself to the kitchen, not because I needed to, but because I wanted a moment to breathe. Watching them tear apart the place I deliberately chose felt heavier than I had expected. I had invited them over hoping for a relaxed evening, but instead, it had become a stage for their mockery. As I leaned against the counter, my phone buzzed with a notification. A message from the building's property manager. Reminder, rent for units 204, 306, and 401 has been processed. I smirked. Daniel lived in 204. Sophia in 306. Lisa in 401. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. I slipped the phone back in my pocket, a wave of calm replacing the sting of their laughter. The truth was like a secret weapon, and I knew when I finally dropped it, the room would go silent. Back in the living room, Sophia had found my bookshelf and was scanning it. "Wow, you got books on real estate and property law. That's ambitious. Planning to be a landlord one day." I almost laughed out loud. One day. I thought. Try 3 years ago. The knock on the door signaled the food's arrival. As I set the pizza down, Daniel joked again. "Careful, don't collapse the table with that weight." Their laughter filled the room, but all I could hear was the sound of money flowing from their pockets into mine every single month. And I started to realize maybe tonight was the right moment to reveal the truth. The smell of pizza filled the room, and everyone dug in. For a few minutes, the teasing stopped as melted cheese and pepperoni distracted them. I sat back, waiting. My heart beat faster, not from anger anymore, but from anticipation. Lisa wiped her hands on a napkin and looked around again. Seriously though, why live here? You could easily rent somewhere better. You're too smart to waste your money on this shoebox. Daniel snorted. He probably can't afford better. Don't let that finance job fool you. He's living paycheck to paycheck. The others chuckled, but Sophia hesitated. Maybe he just likes it here, she offered gently, though even she seemed unconvinced. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. You know what's funny? I said quietly. The room hushed a little. You all talk about how small this place is, how I should move somewhere better, but do you realize I've been in this building longer than any of you? Daniel rolled his eyes. Yeah, so? Loyalty discount. I smiled slowly, letting the silence stretch. No, something else. You see, when I pay rent here, I paused, savoring the moment. I'm basically paying myself. Their forks froze. What do you mean? Sophia asked, frowning. I pulled out my phone, opened my property management app, and turned the screen toward them. Rows of units, names, and rent payments filled the display. And 3 of those names, highlighted in green, were theirs. Lisa leaned forward, squinting. Daniel's smirk faltered. Sophia covered her mouth. I don't just live here, I said calmly. I own the building. Silence. Thick, heavy silence. For the first time that night, nobody laughed. The silence was so complete that I could hear the hum of the fridge from the kitchen. Daniel blinked at me, then let out a sharp laugh, as if clinging to the last shred of denial. Yeah, right. Nice joke, man. But his voice wavered. I didn't answer. Instead, I tapped Daniel's name on the screen. His rent payment history popped up. Every transaction listed every month on time, except for that one late fee in March. I raised my eyebrows at him. Daniel's face drained of color. Wait, what the hell? Lisa leaned closer. No way. She searched for her own name on the list and found it clear as day. She sat back like she'd been slapped. Sophia was the quietest. She didn't even need to check. Her wide eyes told me she already believed. I leaned back, folding my arms. So yes, when you pay rent, you're paying me. Every cracked joke about my tiny apartment tonight, it was said inside a building I own. The same building you all live in. Daniel opened his mouth, closed it, then muttered, Why didn't you say anything before? Because I wanted to see how you'd treat me when you thought I had less than you, I replied evenly. And I got my answer. No one laughed now. The pizza grew cold on the table. Lisa nervously twisted her napkin. Sophia kept her eyes on the floor, and Daniel, the loudest voice all evening, finally had nothing to say. And for the first time in years of knowing them, I felt like the power in the room had shifted entirely to me. The air in the room was thick, almost suffocating. My friends shifted uncomfortably, no longer sprawled out with the easy arrogance they'd had when mocking me. Now they sat upright, stiff, as if the walls had suddenly closed in. Sophia finally broke the silence. Why didn't you tell us? We've been friends for years, and you just kept this secret. Her voice wasn't angry. More stunned, maybe even a little guilty. I sighed, because I wanted friends who valued me for who I am, not for what I own. The apartment you mocked? I chose it. It keeps me grounded. But tonight showed me something important. Lisa glanced at Daniel, then back at me. Look, we didn't mean anything by it. We were just joking around. Joking around? I cut in softly. Lisa, you laughed at my curtains. Daniel, you called me broke. You all assumed this place defined me, and you didn't even stop to think before tearing it apart. Daniel shifted uncomfortably, his face flushing. Okay, maybe we crossed a line. But come on, man, you can't just drop a bomb like that and not expect us to freak out. I shrugged. I didn't expect anything. I just wanted to see your true colors. And I did. The weight of my words hung in the room. Nobody reached for another slice of pizza. Nobody spoke. For once, it was me sitting in complete control while they fumbled to make sense of everything. And in that silence, I realized something else. The reveal wasn't just about shutting them up. It was about finally reclaiming my place in this friendship. Or maybe deciding if it was worth keeping at all. Daniel finally leaned forward, his bravado completely gone. So, all this time, when I was complaining about rent going up, you were complaining to the wrong person. I finished for him. Yes, Daniel. That increase came from me. And before you say anything, it wasn't personal. Market rates rise, costs rise, and I still keep this place cheaper than most buildings in the neighborhood. You should know, you bragged once about how lucky you were to find such a good deal. Daniel's mouth opened, then closed. He had no comeback. Lisa cleared her throat nervously. I mean, it's kind of impressive, honestly. You owning a whole building? That's huge. She forced a laugh, but it sounded brittle. We were just surprised. I looked at her evenly. No, Lisa. You weren't surprised. You were mocking me. There's a difference. Her cheeks reddened, and she quickly looked away. Only Sophia seemed truly shaken. She bit her lip, then said softly, I feel awful. I should have spoken up when they were making fun of you. Instead, I laughed too. Her honesty caught me off guard. I could see she meant it, but it didn't erase the sting of the evening. I leaned back, folding my arms. I didn't invite you here to embarrass anyone. I just wanted to share a night with friends. Instead, you turned it into a competition, one you didn't even realize you'd already lost. The silence that followed was heavier than before. For the first time, none of them seemed comfortable in my apartment. My small apartment, the same one they suddenly understood represented something much bigger than they ever imagined. The mood had shifted so completely that I almost pitied them. Almost. Daniel fiddled with his glass, avoiding my eyes. Lisa busied herself scrolling through her phone, as if pretending she wasn't sitting in the very building I owned. Sophia, though, kept staring at me, like she was seeing me for the first time. Finally, she asked, so why stay here? If you own the whole place, you could live in the nicest unit, or even somewhere else. Why choose this? I glanced around at my modest living room, the second-hand couch, the little table with scratches, the balcony barely wide enough for 2 chairs. I smiled. Because I don't need more. This reminds me where I came from. Every time I step outside, I remember how hard I worked to afford all this. I'd rather live small and think big than do the opposite. Lisa let out a short laugh, but it was more awkward than mocking this time. Guess that makes sense. Still, it's wild. We thought you were barely making it. You wanted to think that, I replied, because it made you feel better about your own choices. Her face tightened, and she went quiet. Daniel finally spoke again, his tone subdued. So what happens now? You gonna throw this in our faces forever? I looked at him steadily. No. What happens now depends on you. Tonight showed me how quick you all were to tear me down when you thought I was below you. That says more about you than about me. The room was silent again, but this time it wasn't just heavy. It was uncomfortable. They were starting to realize the truth stung worse than any joke they'd made about my apartment. And for once, I had no intention of making it easier for them. The awkwardness hung in the air until Sophia spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. You're right. We acted like jerks. I can't speak for them, but I'm sorry. Her words seemed to hang there, challenging the others. Lisa shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Daniel finally muttered, yeah, my bad, though it sounded more like a formality than an apology. I nodded slowly. It's not about the apology. It's about respect. I didn't need you to flatter me or treat me differently. I just wanted friends who didn't measure my worth by the size of my apartment. Lisa sighed, setting down her phone. Okay, we messed up. We shouldn't have laughed. But honestly, you keeping something like this a secret, it feels like you didn't trust us either. I tilted my head, considering her words. Maybe I didn't. And tonight proved I had a reason. That stung, and I could see it in her expression. But I wasn't here to soothe egos anymore. Sophia, still looking guilty, leaned forward. So, do we get another chance? To prove we can be better friends. For the first time that night, I smiled genuinely. That's not up to me. That's up to all of you. What you do next will show me if it's worth keeping this friendship. The room grew quiet again. Nobody reached for the pizza. Nobody cracked another joke. And in that silence, I realized I finally had the respect, or maybe the fear, I should have had from the beginning. The night fizzled out not long after that. Conversation was minimal, forced, nothing like the carefree chatter I had imagined when I invited them over. One by one, they made excuses to leave early. Daniel mumbled something about work in the morning. Lisa claimed she had errands, and Sophia lingered the longest before finally saying goodbye with a soft, apologetic smile. When the door closed behind them, I sat alone in my tiny apartment, the quiet finally soothing. I looked around at the walls they mocked, the curtains they laughed at, the table they thought too small. None of it mattered. What mattered was the deed tucked safely in my desk drawer, the property records that proved every inch of this building was mine. I thought about the irony. My friends had spent the night mocking the smallest space in the building, not realizing it was the only one I had chosen freely. Their laughter had bounced off these walls, but their rent checks would still arrive in my account on the first of the month. And now they knew exactly who received them. Maybe our friendships would survive, maybe they wouldn't. Either way, I wasn't bothered. Tonight had given me clarity about who they were, about who I was, and about the difference between owning something and truly belonging to it. I leaned back on my couch, smiling to myself. Let them laugh at my apartment. At the end of the day, the whole building laughed with me.